Pond leaks are way more common than I originally thought. I thought I was the only one. So I made a video about a year ago because we had a pond leak out back, a pretty bad pond leak, and you can see the entire video on our channel. Not just one video, I've got a lot of videos about our whole process, but this is kind of an update. This has been a year to the date almost from when our pond was over 4 feet low, and we've experienced incredible results from this product, Seekleak. It's a polymer application. It's a linear polymer, part 1, and a cross-linked polymer, part 2. And this is what one unit is. This is a 55-pound bag and another 55-pound bag, and you apply them together and you spread it on the surface of the water. And you can see videos on my channel about how we did that. The beauty, the magic that happens with the cross-linked and the linear polymer together is that the cross-linked binds to the linear polymer, and the cross-linked polymer expands over the next 3 weeks. So after you apply it, it sinks down to the bottom of the pond, it binds to the clay, and then sits there and expands, and then you sit there and wait. And then it's hard when you're spending a lot of money on some powder, because that's what this is. It's like sugar, basically, the consistency of sugar, and you spread that out on the surface of your pond, and then it just sinks down to the bottom, and then you sit there and wait, and you're wondering, what did I just spend my money on? But be patient, because it's worked. We didn't have to drain our pond. We didn't have to lose our fish. We didn't have to call the excavator in and re-dig everything. And we were losing 4 inches a day of surface water. And now, after a year, we're still losing about 1/2 inch a day. Some of that is evaporation. Some of it is a little bit of a leak still. My friend TJ Hudson at Hudland Management supplies this Seekleak. This is a similar product. In fact, it's the same product as Soilfloc, which you can find online from a number of different sources. You'll pay a little bit more for that product, and you won't get near the consultation from TJ Hudson, who has been incredible in our pond process, consulting us and strategizing on how to go about sealing our leak. And you can watch that all on my channel. So if you're here and you're looking for pond leaks, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and go back into the archive, the history, and you can see our entire journey. It was about I don't know, close to a year-long journey from the time we found our leak or realized our pond was leaking to the point where we found the leak, and how we did that, and then how we treated it, what worked, what did not work. And I'm here to say we're on the other side of it, and it's been a year now, and our pond has held water. Praise the Lord. So a lot of you have asked how our experiment has gone and what the status of the pond is. And so a year later, after we did our polymer treatment, we've been holding fairly steady. We still have a slow leak, but not nearly the hemorrhage that we had. We were losing 4 inches of water per day, and now we're down to only 1/2 inch of water per day. And it's held steady that way for a year now. I'm going to set up a scenario where there's a leak in the pond, and then once I get the substrate down with a couple strategic sand veins where the water would leak out, I'm going to fill it with water and capture the leak rate, and then fill it with water and sprinkle the polymer on the top of the water, just like we did on our pond out here last year, which has been holding water. But I want to see it firsthand work within a controlled environment in this little box. All right, I gathered some clay samples from along the sides of our pond. I'm actually going to drill another one to really get our leak. We only had one major leak, one major hole in ours, but put this thing to the test. Okay, so now what I've got is some porous landscape fabric. I don't want the sand to fall through these big holes. And now we've got some sand. It's just a big cup of fine sand, which we're gonna stick right over top of that just to hold that down. All right, so we got a bunch of sand. Let's say your pond has a bunch of sand on the bottom with big gaping holes underneath. Okay, so now we got our good, well, clay that we used to build our pond that we're gonna stick here in the bottom. And there's a fair amount of gravel in here as well. Okay, let's say we've got some more sand in there. We've got sand and clay mixed in. Some more good clay, and there's some gravel. Some more sand in there. So this is really not a good compaction at all. Most ponds aren't that good. Got seeps and leaks all over the place. 2 feet of good compacted clay is typically what they say for a pond to hold water. In our scaled down version, I'm gonna say about 2 inches will probably be what we want. Really, this is gonna simulate what a real pond bottom is gonna be like. Put a little bit more in there, bank it up on the sides a little bit, create a little bit more of a basin, kind of like a pond would be. So this is going to be like you didn't even compact your pond at all. You should. Well, let's say you didn't, and your pond started filling up, and you just had loose clay down there. The water pressure is going to kind of compact it some, but this is not the ideal pond build right here. So you can see, got big chunks of clay that are just loose in here. Nothing is really bonded together. It's clay, but then there's gravel mixed in. You saw the sand that I poured in there at the bottom to simulate probably what is a more common pond build than we would care to admit. Okay, so now for extra effect, I've set this up on some stilts, and right underneath our 2 big holes, I've kind of hollowed it out a little bit, and I'm going to fill these 2 guys full of sand right there, all the way down, right on top of. So let's just say we've got 2 sand veins that lead right down to a hole in the bottom of the pond to really make that spot weak. Now it starts to rain on the pond, and it starts to fill up and hold some water. Just gonna try to lightly sprinkle all the corners. Saturate. I don't want a gully washer. The truth is, it's often. All right, so it's raining and our pond starts to hold some water. All right, and then that rain event stops. We're just gonna see what kind of leak rate we have coming through. Nothing yet. I don't see anything dripping out the bottom. You can see the side here, like the clay on the bottom has yet to absorb all the water. So we gotta saturate the clay here first. That'll take a little while. And I still don't have any kind of leak out the bottom yet. I think we need another rain event. This is 3 minutes after the initial rain. God opens the heavens, and all right, we're increasing the hydrostatic pressure. This is a 3-inch overnight rain, big storm. All right, why is your pond water so cloudy and brown? Well, it's mixed with clay. Once it settles out, the water will clear, but there's a lot of sediment in there. Okay, look here. We've got, I don't want to get too close. We're starting to drip and leak out the bottom now. This corner's still dry. Haven't looked at the back side here. And we've got steady drips coming out our 2 holes here in the bottom. This is probably what's going on in a lot of your ponds, which is why you're here watching this video. Okay, more rain event. And we start coming over the overflow. We're right there at our overflow level. We're leaking out the bottom. All right, so that's been 10 minutes. And I must say, I'm actually surprised that the leak isn't any faster than it is. So it's hard to measure exactly the vertical water loss. So I'm gonna give it an hour instead. So guys, while we're waiting for our little pond leak experiment, let me tell you a little bit about our pond. Our pond is 2 years old. It's just a little under an acre and about 23 feet deep. And we've got bluegill, we've got smallmouth bass, perch, red ear sunfish, and walleye, and golden shiners. We've got a reproducing population of golden shiners, which is exciting. Anything about the pond build, pond management is interesting to you, go ahead and subscribe to our channel, because this is what we do. Whoa, look out. I got a little feisty smallmouth. All right, so this is at least half the size of some of the other ones in here. And this guy's got to go. This one has to be an offspring of what we stocked in here 2 years ago. This is a recruiting perch. He's probably 5-6 inches. These were about the size when we put them in here, and we've got 8 and 9 inches now. So this has to be one that was born last year. Good stuff. It's nice to see the reproducing perch, because that now makes 3 year classes in our pond to feed our walleyes as well as our smallmouth bass, to go along with our bluegills as forage base in our pond. Okay guys, so we're about 45 minutes in, not quite an hour yet, but we are starting to see some of that loss. That leak rate continues steadily at, I'm gonna say, you know, pretty close. It'll be pretty close to an inch of water loss in this experiment per hour. And here from our overflow down to the bottom, we can say that we're about a 4-inch pond, and we're gonna lose a quarter of the water in an hour. So I just want to get a baseline. I'm gonna end up moving this right over here. Before I put any polymer in here, I'm gonna let this settle out. 24 hours later, we have a dry pond, and that is sad. All of the water leaked out underneath. And so Unfortunately, some of you are probably in this situation. So we've got a serious leak in our little pond setup. I didn't want the water to get all cloudied up, but it will. All right, we have hit the overflow. Okay, there's our leak. Okay, this is the before. This is the speed of the leak before we apply any of the polymer. And from our application last year, we've still got our buckets here, part 1. This is a really fine, it's like really fine powder. You wouldn't know the difference in part 1 and 2, but okay. And what I also hear people talk about, and you'll see a lot of recommendation, that bentonite, this granular bentonite, is something that you should apply to your pond. This stuff should only be applied on a dry pond to work until into your clay bottom. This is not going to help if you have water in your pond already. Sprinkling this on the surface does not seal a pond. So this stuff is what you would need to sprinkle onto your clay bottom, stir it all up, mash it, compact it into your pond bottom, and that will help sealing a clay basin. But once you have water into your pond, it is a waste of money to dump bentonite onto the surface of the water. It will just sink. And I've tried and tested that. I've got some video of when we did that last year, some underwater video. I'm going to sprinkle this right here on the edge to see. You can see me dropping that right here along the edge. It falls really fast right here along the edge, and we can watch this expand. You see the size of those granules? When you drop it right here along the edge, we'll watch those things expand. But they don't compact very well. It doesn't bond together to make a tight enough seal. So if you dump bentonite on the surface of your water, it's going to fall down and it's going to look like that on the bottom of your pond. I'll come back and show you in about 10 minutes what that looks like. Alright, so here's the difference between the bentonite granules and more of the powdery Seekleak polymer. Okay, so our water's starting to clarify a little bit, which is great. It expands, kind of gets gooey. Okay guys, so this is about an hour later. We've lost our inch roughly off the surface. Our leak is continuing here. The water is actually clarified now. You can see down through it after all the clay has settled. Our bentonite over there in the corner. Now it's time to put on the Seekleak polymer. When you're applying polymer, you want your pond to be as full as possible to create as much hydrostatic pressure, that downward force pressure that increases the flow rate, because the faster the water is leaving your pond because of the higher pressure, the deeper that Seekleak will get pulled into the seeps and leaks in your pond. when you're considering applying this, you want to do it after a rain where you've got your pond as high as you can get it. And you also want to do it in windless conditions. All right, that's gonna be good. All right, once again, using the kitchen supplies. Okay, let's see here. That's 0.1. I'm gonna zero that out. All right, we got 0.2. 0.2 of our part 1 in that one. Our part 2 got a different cup, same weight. 0.2. This is the standard application rate for our little experiment over here. And so okay, I got our part 1 here. Our pond is full, we're leaking, and we are going to sprinkle this stuff right on to the surface. And this is how you would apply this on your pond, spreading that all out. Okay, that was part 1, and now part 2. You can see the video of how I applied this in our pond on a larger scale. But just like that, all right, we've got our application rate, and now there's this goo that sits on the surface, and I'll see if I can, you can kind of see some of those particles falling over here, and as they fall slowly, wherever the water is being sucked out the fastest, more of that polymer is going to find that leak area. Let me talk to you a little bit about patience. It is hot out here, and so when you apply this to your pond, this is not an immediate fix. This polymer takes about 3 weeks for it to expand to its full expansion. And so when you put that polymer on your pond, your leak is going to continue for about the next week. It'll continue to leak at about the same rate as you have been experiencing. It was only after the first 7 days when I looked and following our leak rate where we first started to see some of the improvement in the slowing of the leak. And then it continued to get better and better over the next 2 weeks. So a total of 3 weeks it takes this Seekleak polymer to expand to its full capacity. We'll check in on our pond box over here. So we've applied this polymer, and it's still going to be leaking, dripping out like that. And our water level is just underneath the overflow. And I'm going to come back here in about an hour and give you an update. Still got plenty of polymer sitting on the surface. That's the stuff that I want to just fall down to the bottom and cover our clay. Okay, this is an hour later, and this is our drip rate, which is significantly slower. And we've lost at least half of the water rate like in a good way. Like probably not even a half of an inch in that hour. It's basically gel. It's probably kind of blurry, but the gel that's covering the surface of the clay blanket on the bottom. And so there we have an hour later, and again, this polymer is going to expand for the next 3 weeks. And if we've already seen this level of improvement in an hour, stick around. Okay guys, now we are 2.5 hours after the polymer application. We're losing light. It is now 12 hours since our last report overnight. 12 hours later, and I'm looking for this. We're gonna get one drip here. This is a riveting video. Okay, there's one drip. Two drips. Okay, this is the before. This is the speed of the leak before we apply any of the polymer. The dripping has slowed significantly. We ended up not getting any rain. It's just a bunch of thunder and lightning. And after one tiny application, we have not even lost an inch yet in over 12 hours since our application. So you're probably wondering, what is the consistency of this stuff? It's just a this jelly, slimy layer down there that just hardens and it kind of fuses to the clay bottom. It's safe for fish, and it just chemically binds with the clay over time and just creates a sealed layer in the bottom. Alright, so now this is 19 hours after initial application. We are 48 hours after application. We had some rain overnight. Actually some strong storms yesterday, but let us see what the leak is up to. Couple drops every 30 seconds. Not too bad. The water might be a little slimy still. So how do you get your hands on some of this stuff? You can't buy this on the internet. You have to work through TJ Hudson. And you can reach him at tj@hudlandmgmt.com. Send him an email and he will respond to you. Set up a phone call to talk about your situation. This is free for you. The consultation is free for you. TJ is so generous with his time. So if you're not a subscriber yet, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Last year we spent all of our effort into sealing our leak and trying to help educate the pond community on pond things. And so now we're shifting our focus to our fishery and all of the vegetation management. And so if this is helpful for you, this is what we do on this channel. So I appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time. Biggest smallmouth that I've caught out of the pond, and I got him by the tail. Goodness.